It's me, Raven, AS Films Coordinator, and I'm here today with Cassidy and Stacy from Talking to Crows. And we're going to talk about their new project, Just Like the Men, which is an awesome new feature-length movie they just put out last year. So I'll go ahead and start by just letting y'all introduce yourselves, just like your name and pronouns and what your role is with Talking to Crows. If Cassidy, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Cassidy Brooks, she, her, and I am one of the founding members at Talking to Crows, and I produce, direct, and hold the camera a lot of the time on set.
I'm Stacy Reynolds, she, her, and I'm also one of the co-owners, and I typically do most of the post-production, editing, and then I'm also on set to assist in whatever capacity.
Awesome. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is just sort of what Talking to Crows is, how y'all define it, and how you got it started, how you all met each other. I'm not sure how many members are there in Talking to Crows? Or how do you describe it? As like a filmmaking collective?
Yeah, that is actually how we describe it, is a film collective. And there are 6 members.
Technically six.
Technically members. 6.
We do have a couple silent ones as well. Maybe sprinkled on top.
It's kind of a wild structure for a company, but there are 6 active members. The other 4 help us on creative projects, like Just Like the Men, the film. They were all involved helping on that. And then also through Talking to Crows, Stacy and I work commercially in media. So her and I do that as well. And yeah, Stace, I don't know. It takes a while to unpack the tangled web that is Talking to Crows.
Well, it's a complicated origin story.
Well, it is, but we also sometimes want to make up a cool origin story just for entertainment value. But here's the real story. Cassidy and I met doing musical theater, specifically Evil Dead the Musical. We performed in Washington and Oregon and for quite a few years. And we both knew that we wanted to get into film, and we weren't, well, I at the time didn't necessarily have a really concrete plan. I was thinking about starting my own business, and Cassidy and her husband and a former partner were working on a multimedia cartoon called American Pizza. And so they formed Talking to Crows around that project. And then a few years after that was in 2013. So in 2015, Cassidy and I merged our paths officially on paper, and I bought into the company. And that's when we started really practicing the film side of things. So I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does the name Talking to Crows have any kind of special significance? Where does that come from?
From my great grandmother.
Yes.
On my father's side.
Twice removed.
And she loved crows. She had many pet crows. No, it doesn't come from that. This is the actual thing that we want to make up cool stories about.
You're right.
This is the name one. Talking to Crows. But one of the founding members who's no longer in the company was a philosophy major at the time. Mm-hmm. We founded the company when we were in our early 20s around American Pizza. We were a little bit angsty at that point because we were working restaurant jobs, grinding it through, trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our lives, and put all that angst into this pizza cartoon anyway. And so one of the other founding members was a philosophy major, and there was this concept called talking to lions that he came across in one of his classes. And the concept is that even if lions spoke English, if you tried to have a conversation with them, you wouldn't be able to understand what they were saying because our experience is so different than a lion's. And so as misunderstood 20-somethings full of angst, we felt like that was pretty cool, the talking to lions concept. But as Stace mentioned, she and I met doing Evil Dead the musical. And so during that time of our lives, we were all pretty like focused on horror, aside from the animation project. And Stacy and I talked a lot about developing a company, doing a film together someday. Like as we were touring with the musical, we were always talking about that. And at that point, yeah, we're kind of focused in the macabre genre, or immersed in it at least. So for Talking to Crows, we decided to go with crows instead of lions because we felt like it was creepier. And it's such a drawn out story. So I'm glad we set aside like 45 minutes to address our company name, but we like it. It suits us now. So
yeah, I think that's a good origin story. I don't think you need to make one up.
Thank you. I don't know if we'll ever be capable of it. We always try. We're like,
this is the moment.
This is our time to
But we don't
shine.
rehearse it. It's always like off the cuff. That's the problem. We need to like write a good origin story.
You gotta commit to the bit.
day.
Yeah, I'm not very good at lying too. So
I know.
So when you're approaching a big project, like just like the men, as a team, how do you kind of determine what role each of you are going to take on a project? And is that different depending on each project and which members are working on it?
yeah, that's a great question. So for just like the men, and I'm assuming for any indie film that was working with the same type of budget we had, Stacy and I ended up doing the vast majority of the pre-production. Like we did all the pre-production, just the two of us. And then it just depends on the size of the project, how it trickles down to other company members. So for just like the men, a couple of them were actors. Usually we throw it out like, what do you all want to do? What do you want to get out of whatever the project is? And get their feedback first. So on this film, yeah, we had some of our members were on crew and some of them were acting. And we all stepped in as extras just because we were working on a shoestring budget. So it's just kind of how that ended up being. And it was fun to have multiple characters played by the same actors peppered throughout. Yeah, and on smaller shoots, it's typically Stacy and I, and then again, we kind of throw it out to everybody where we're like, does anybody want to help?
Yeah, when it comes to determining everyone's role, we just play to each other's strengths or the strength we want to develop. Like if someone in our company's looking to get some experience in a certain area of production, we keep that in mind. But we've been doing it now for so many years that it's all kind of locked in at this point. We all know what we're all good at and where we excel. And so it's become really, really fluid and natural how it all sort of evolves on set, just because we've been working as a team, not just in Talking to Crows, but also in Evil Dead the musical. We got to really understand what teamwork means.
And just understand like what it means to be pushed like beyond exhaustion and still have to like turn it on and like perform, but then meet fans and then like break down a set and drive home, you know, like pushed beyond any type of tired I've ever felt before, which is similar to a film set. If you are shooting like, I mean, I'm sure with some short films, this can be the case, but certainly with just like the men, again, on our small budget, you know, we would try to shoot for as long of days as Stacy and I could handle. And we shot them all back to back to back to back. So it's a pretty rigorous ride once production actually starts rolling.
Yeah, we all know what each other's worst days look like.
Yeah.
Which is helpful, and we all still like and love each other. So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
I definitely think that is one of the things. I think film brings people very close together because, yeah, it's all just kind of mutual suffering. for your shared goal of creating something beautiful. So how did you originally discover Ella Higginson's original script for Just Like the Men?
Laura Lafredo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Laura Lafredo. She's an English professor at Western.
Mhm.
And we were interviewing her on a completely unrelated project. And at the end of that interview,
And it was for a documentary. It was for a short documentary. So she was like, we had our camera out and stuff. I feel like that's important. Right. We were like, we had all of our gear.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. We were recording her. So at the end of the interview, as we were wrapping up, she said that she had to share something with us. And she was very excited in her very Laura Lafredo way. People who know her know exactly what we're talking about.
She almost pulled her filing cabinet on top of herself.
Yeah.
When she was like getting
it was very exciting.
The materials out.
And she shared with us Ella Higginson, who is an author and a poet native to Bellingham, who has sort of completely disappeared from the literary world. Mm-hmm. Laura Lafredo recently has been restoring her body of work. And in that project over the past 10 years, she came across a screenplay that Ella Higginson had written in 1914 about her experience helping her friend Frances Extell run for office in 1912, when women received the right to vote in Washington state.
And Laura didn't even know who Ella was at that point. Like she had been studying, she like specializes in 19th century literature, specifically with female writers, and was in the Western archives, like poking around. She needed to fill like a page, like her final page. She just like needed something to fill in one of her other books that about like authors of that time period, and just happened upon Ella's body of work, which was like 12, Laura said it was like 12 feet long of just like documents. And so in sifting through all of that work, she came across the screenplay Just Like the Men, and was essentially like, I don't have time to do this because I'm a professor and I'm busy like uncovering her entire life's work and like getting that off the ground, which she's doing a beautiful job with. Even still, like she's still working on reviving Ella's work and reputation. And so it was like, here you go. Here's this magic. Here's the box number in the archives. Go make this movie, please. And we were like, okay. And yeah, took it from there. I mean, really, that was it.
It does feel like it fell into our lap, but film has always just been the direction that we've gone. Mm-hmm. And so out of that journey has been some unexpected developments. The biggest one being Just Like the Men. We had no idea that was coming down the pike. That was a huge surprise.
Yeah. And at that point we like hadn't really locked in our aesthetic or anything as a company yet, with Stacy coming in. And my husband he only wanted to work on the animation project. He's never wanted to like professionally pursue film. So yeah, once Stacy joined, we were just like making sketch comedy essentially and filming ourselves, trying to figure out like, what is our film aesthetic? What is our voice like on film? And in doing that is how we met Laura Lafredo. So it's interesting. Yeah. Just how things come from the chain of events, you know. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool how it works out.
Yeah. So did you always envision Talking to Crows as being very like focused on women filmmakers, or did that kind of develop later? Because it sounds like in the beginning it maybe wasn't as focused in that way.
It was actually a male majority when we started, which I've been like thinking about lately. I'm like, that's so interesting. No, it evolved for sure as a female majority. Stacy joined, a few other members joined a little bit later. But in Stacy and I doing short film together, we discovered that when we added in social issues that were important to us, our work was stronger. And so that was what started to kind of hone us in on focusing more on women's stories and working with women and uplifting women. and then just meeting more and more women too in the community and stuff. I think that also like helps snowball it. And just like the men is a really special thing too, because that was, we were producing that as we were also growing our commercial side of our business and networking professionally just in Bellingham. So I think just because of the spirit of Ella and of just like the men, we inherently kind of had support from women too. In just like networking and reaching out through that project, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's definitely something that's developed and that like isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think film is probably one of the hardest creative industries to break into as a woman. So it is great to see stuff like Talking to Crows. Because but this year has been a really interesting year, I feel like, for women filmmakers, because there's stuff like Nomadland and Promising Young Woman are both getting a lot of like Oscar buzz. Hopefully, maybe Nomadland will win Best Picture. But what do y'all feel like still needs to change about the film industry that could help make it more welcoming for women filmmakers and give women more opportunities?
I think more women from the neck down, basically, meaning women running production companies. I think you see a lot of great films coming out of like Promising Young Woman that came out of Neon. Neon is a female majority board of directors, I believe now, but there's a lot of women on their board and working higher up in that company, seeking out more projects by women, to get them more seen. So, I think there's like a million ways that the film industry needs to change, but I would say that is a huge way it could change, maybe quicker. Like Dakota Johnson has her own film company now. I don't recall what the production company is called though. It's like Twin something Productions or anyway. But and I think she co-owns that with a man, but still it's a woman looking for film and a type of voice and experience to be represented that up to this point, largely in Hollywood, you don't see.
I would second that. And I would say also to not ask for permission or wait for some sort of opportunity or magical door or window or hole for you to crawl through. You just, whatever gets you started down the right path is where you should go, and expect to have the job that you want to have. Cassidy and I just decided to do this. There was no one that came to us and said, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you start this company? Or what? I mean, just like the men does feel like it was a gift, but it's because we decided to be filmmakers. That's why it happened. So I think that there's a mentality piece there that I have to, and will probably be my life's work, internalizing, owning these positions that we say we want and deserve and can do really well. So I think that plus women at the top, we'll see all this change that we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree completely. I feel like for a lot of people, there is that barrier of entry with film where, with film especially, in a way that I think doesn't happen in some other art forms because film is so expensive and requires a lot of people to do. But yeah, a lot of people think I need somebody to like tell me, you're allowed to make this movie. I think this idea is good enough, so you're allowed to make this now. But on that note, how did y'all, when you decided to do Just Like the Men, what were your first steps to approach even starting a project like that? Because this is your first feature film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first thing we did was we got as many women and men involved that were smarter and knew more than we knew. And we said, hey, let's all have a meeting. And this is what's happening. And we're going to debrief you. And we need guidance. And I mean, I would say that that team of support was about 15 people strong. And they were people that we prepared, like, we're going to continuously bother you for years now on this project. I mean, really, that's kind of how we treated it. It was just like, hey, please enlist in our movie project and kind of counsel us along the way.
We'd spent so many years cultivating relationships in the community, not fully understanding, like there was no ulterior motive necessarily, just we really wanted to be invested in the community, and we had all these projects that involved them. So when it came time for just like the men, we had done some legwork without even fully understanding what that legwork was, as far as forging these connections and these relationships that helped lift us up and give us the tools or experience that we needed to start conceptualizing pre-production. So that really is important. And that can come through anything. If you want to be in this field, like for me, it was doing theater. I was like, I just want to get connected with these people. Where are these people? I will do theater. So there's so many different ways to build that network that can then help lift you up, which is, yeah, really what got us rolling with pre-production.
And then what was the process like for revising the script and updating it for a more modern audience?
It was...
How much did the finished script resemble the original? Is it like two completely different?
No, we tried to keep it, that was something we wrestled with a lot, was if we needed to modernize it. It's like an all-white cast. It doesn't even address that. There's like a lot of gaping holes in the screenplay as it is. But we made the decision early on, after a lot of back and forth and like discussing with our support system, to just keep it as a true adaptation as close as possible. So the only things that really were cut, there was one scene that like was a little nonsensical. It just like made no sense on the train with the like lady with the rug. Do you remember that, Stacy? Like Melwood and Carlton. You don't even remember it.
I don't even remember
There was a confusing scene that we cut out, and then we cut out a bunch of like adorable driving camera directions. It's like the car drove on a county road, and then the car drove in the town, and then the car drove down in the town, and then the car drove. So cars were new at that point. Ella was like very obviously enamored with the car. And there was also some like flashes into she in real life took a ferry up to Alaska, or a ship up to Alaska for a couple summers, and wrote a book about it, and thought that was really cool. And so there was like some times where she would like suddenly be talking about like being a boat captain in Alaska. But I mean, really, we didn't cut that much, and most of the dialogue is true to what Ella wrote, where Stacy and I grew up being fans of Monty Python and Mel Brooke, and we're kind of raised on slapstick. So I think we already went into the project with that lens prepared for the two of us, at least. And it was funny, just like the men's funny. Ella wrote a very funny film, and it just lent itself, because of how dated it is, but also the comedy that is there from the very beginning. It just lent itself perfectly to like Mel Brooks kind of style humor. And that was an interesting part of the film making process for me, was understanding that comedy doesn't just happen like in the writing process. It happens in like every single stage of production. Like a costume can become like kind of a joke, and then like once you're on set, something that could be a prop somewhere that's there. We filmed at the Linden Pioneer Museum, so there was like a lot of stuff that was already there that we didn't necessarily like choose or stage there, but that would work out perfectly for a joke. So comedy was interesting in that capacity, where it was being layered off of an already really fantastic piece of source material.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to hear that you guys didn't change it much, because I, watching it, assumed that a lot of the comedic elements were things that y'all had added in later. But that's fun. I guess maybe that's just my own bias because I was like, I guess I thought people didn't have fun in 1914.
I mean, I would get that. Like, I made that same assumption. Laura Lafredo had told us that, she thought it was very funny, but she's also very well versed in literature of that time, so I think I was skeptical going into reading the screenplay. Not skeptical as far as like thinking it was an amazing magical discovery, but like, is this going to be funny? And it really was. Like, reading that script was just one of the coolest things ever. Ella's like handwriting was in the margins on it. Like, her actual handwriting is in the margins of the original screenplay. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. And then since the film does take place in the 1910s, I'm wondering, as such a like small independent production, how did y'all approach the sets and costumes and trying to recreate that time period with the budget that you guys were working with?
We were really lucky in that regard. And this goes back to our network. We forged a connection with the Linden Pioneer Museum, as Cassidy mentioned. And so we were able to film the majority of the film there. And then another member up in the Linden community. Most of it actually was filmed up in Linden. And then the costumes was another networking relationship that we had, who knew this woman who knew this woman who knew this woman. So we were able to connect with all these people and really rally the community to get behind the project. And so those things, I mean, it was all because of our community that we were able to get access to those resources.
And that's something that's really cool about filmmaking. It's like, because some of them were relationships we definitely had forged prior to making the film, but when you're making a movie, it's fun, so people want to be involved. And it definitely taught us, or at least me, to not be scared to ask for something. And it is like with filmmaking, I will say, like, we crowdfunded for the film. So we'd already done like a lot of asking. So it, you can't get kind of bashful when it comes to like asking for so much support. But my advice to anyone who wants to make anything is like, ask your community, even people that like you don't necessarily know, tell them what you're doing, reach out to them, ask. Like, they might say no, but at least you've reached out. And we were so pleasantly surprised by just like, seriously, just so much support from so many different avenues that we didn't even expect. People who are still extremely supportive of our careers, that we met just because we were like, we need this thing in this movie. You want to help us? And they've become like people that we'll probably be in touch with for our lives. So yeah, if anyone that's watching this wants to make something, like, just do it and ask people for help, because they'll probably say yes.
That's such an important piece right there, because it feels good to be asked things. It's validating something that you have, or some skill or some resource. It's flattering to be asked for help. So that is, yeah, I will second that. That was a huge lesson, and a weight off my shoulders, I think, once you realize that people want to help you.
Yeah,
they really want to show up for you.
It gets less scary once you like ask it a couple times, because people are nice.
People are nice. That is true. Well, hopefully, most of the time.
Hopefully, yes.
Some of the time.
And what was the process like for y'all crowdfunding?
Ooh, crowdfunding. We made a snap decision when we decided to crowdfund. Stacy came across the opportunity through Seed and Spark, which is basically Kickstarter, but it's just for filmmakers. And they also give you a lot more tools as a filmmaker to make a successful project, depending on how well funded your project gets. Yeah, they're a like network of filmmakers. If you're a filmmaker and don't know about Seed and Spark, like, go to their website and check it out, because they are another part of our community that is still a part of our community now as filmmakers. So that was, I've done a Kickstarter campaign before for American Pizza, the animation project. And man, Kickstarter gives you like no real guidance or like feedback. Maybe they are doing more so now. This was like 10 years ago. But yeah, Seed and Spark, they like review your video and like give you video courses to go through first before you even start a campaign. So that was an amazing springboard into it, instead of a place like Kickstarter where you're just kind of like going in blind. Seed and Spark definitely gives you more structure. And yeah, doing a crowdfunding campaign is like having a second job. It takes a ton of work and planning. But I think it was really good for the film project because it helped us also like tighten in with the branding and stuff. And it was fun in a way. It was just like madness, especially because, yeah, I think you decided, Stacy, you were like, we're going to do a Seed and Spark project or a campaign, and we have to submit it in a week or something. It was like that much time. And I was like out of state too when you told me.
Man, I blocked all this from my mind. I was like blacked out at the time. I was out of my mind. But it really, not only was it amazing because Seed and Spark is an amazing platform, it also connected us to really amazing people. We found our executive producer who came in with the next wave of funding for the project because he saw our pitch video. Or wait a minute.
He knew Ashton, but I think we had crowdfunded first before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we got connected with him. We also connected with other filmmakers on the Seed and Spark platform, which has been really amazing, and something that I don't think either of us were really expecting. So it is soul crushing sometimes, especially when
the whole time. Let's be clear. It's the worst.
It happened to me recently too, where I like went to go message someone on Facebook, and the last thing I'd messaged them was like, "Hey, here's this project. Money.
Give me your money for my project."
So that part is not fun. But yeah, it definitely builds some character. And yeah, not only will it hopefully give you money, but it will connect you in more ways than you would expect.
And it makes you get your shit together because you have to have like so much branding prepared. Yeah. I mean, I think if you really do want to be successful in it, you have to have like everything ready to go and locked in, like in brand, even if that is a film, you know?
Yeah, it is kind of like a mini film production in a way, right? Because you have so much pre-production and content. You have to have all of that marketing done, and then you release the video.
And Seed and Spark requires a video update like once a week. Like they have some like requirements for filming.
Like boot camp.
Yeah. But it was good. I'm glad we did it. I always say I'll never do it again. And then Stacy like looks at me like this.
I give her one of those.
Never say never, I guess, but I say never all the time about crowdfunding. But do it if you haven't tried.
So once you were actually on set, how do you both approach directing? Especially, I imagine since this was your first feature, this was probably a much larger crew. Yeah, what was your approach to that like?
Well, we did, so I want to just plug pre-production again really quick, because pre-production, when you're doing a large scale film, short film or feature length, like is the most crucial part, because once you get onto set, everything has a life of its own. Like everything has a life of its own. So being as hyper organized as possible in your pre-production planning and your spreadsheets and all of your stuff will help being on set time to be more fun. And you kind of lose your mind when you're on set a little bit, or at least like I do, Stacy, because again, on Just Like the Men, Stacy and I produced it and co-directed it. So if anyone had a question essentially on set, it was for one of us. And a lot of the people we had worked with, like at least a lot of the crew members we had worked with before, so we already had rapport with them. Like they know how we are to work with as part of a film crew. And then, yeah, we have kind of an interesting symbiotic relationship, Stacy and I do, where it's not so much like one of us directs, one of us holds the camera. We like are discussing everything we do at any given time. And we also like to listen to other people's feedback. Like we had a person who would come and paint with light, as he said. He was like our key grip and lighting guy. And you know, like letting people kind of run with what they want to run with a little bit. Like you've said, Raven, it's such a group effort to do film. And so we like to be open to other people's feedback and really stressed on our set that like we wanted everyone to be nice to each other and respectful and all of that.
Yeah, I think there's this misrepresentation when it comes to productions as far as the director goes. And it's something that we really value or worship maybe, or see as like the person at the very top. And in our experience, it's so impossible to put all of that credit on one person because it's just not true. It takes so many people to pull off a production, you know, and like Cassidy just said, the organization has to be there from the get-go. And that's all producers. They come in and they get it organized and then it's execution time. So I think that, yeah, our style anyway is very collaborative, and it is democratic, I guess. When there needs to be a schedule and when decisions need to be made, that's where Cassidy and I come in and we make those decisions. But I don't know, I just wanted to say that because I think it is something that like bothers me. And I'm thinking about the Oscars coming up and I'm like, you know, and they saved the last one. Well, I guess last one's best picture, but you know, second to last category is always best director. And I'm like, man, it takes so many people. It takes so many people. And I know every single director would say that too, I'm sure. I don't know. Maybe not. But yeah, it's our process is very much group oriented because it is just inherently.
Yeah, we had a really hard time even like building our end credits for the film because we don't like the like weird Hollywood hierarchy of filmmaking because of what Stacy just said. Like it takes everybody.
I think American Honey, remember that movie American Honey a few years ago? That's my favorite credit ending because they just blasted all the names at the end, just like a ton of names on the screen. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, yes, that is it. It takes so many people here to lift everybody else up.
All of that rings very true to me. I've always sort of thought of the director. I agree there's that very traditional idea of the director as like this tyrannical like overlord of the set. But yeah, I always think of it as like finding really amazing, talented people and giving them a space to do the thing that they do well, and bringing all of those people together into a finished
and that's
product.
what a film set is.
Mm-hmm.
A film set is too, because like, you know, even like the grips or an extra or whoever is like still getting in there and like giving input in some way, because you kind of all become like a family. You know, like being on set is weird because you get goofy and like you're exhausted, but like have a lot of adrenaline because you're on set. So yeah, it's being collaborative in the way of filmmaking just feels like the absolute best.
So I guess I'll start getting to our wrap-up questions here. So overall, in general, are there any specific like films or filmmakers that really inspire your guys' work that you really consider like, what is the word I'm looking for, that you aspire to?
Oh man, well, Chloe Zhao is like on the very tippity top of my list right now because of her narrative documentary filmmaking style. I'm really obsessed with that. And especially as like a grassroots filmmaker that doesn't have any money, that just seems like such an ingenious, it is such an ingenious way to go about filmmaking and interact with people who are acting for you. So she's at the top of my list right now, just like off the top of my head. Stace?
Yeah, there's so many emerging directors right now. And Emerald Fennell is coming to my mind, the director and writer of Promising Young Woman. Yeah, I'm trying to think of more formative from my past, but a lot of those, and this is not bad, but there are a lot of men. Like we already talked about, Mel Brooks is a big, like, formative.
Yeah, he's a big one.
Person for us.
Yeah.
But as we get further into our own work, I find the things that I'm consuming I'm not necessarily looking to mold, or I'm not personally wanting to create something in that image. It's all just sort of going into this brand, I guess, I feel that has been created with Talking to Crows. So it's getting harder, I think, for me to pinpoint, like, that's it. That's what we're trying to do. But Emerald Fennell, for me, I love Nomadland, but Emerald Fennell, like...
Yeah, Emerald Fennell visually too.
She just like...
Killed it.
Yeah, she like changed the game. Like she reformatted the landscape for me.
Yeah.
So she is very inspiring right now.
And Autumn de Wilde too. I want to throw her name into the arena. She directed Emma. And she's directed music videos and was actually a photographer, is how she got started. Yeah, and she was someone I like didn't even know that I was obsessed with for a long time. She photographed the White Stripes on one of their tours, so I like had a photo book of hers for years, and then started following her on Instagram, and like everything she did was inspiring to me, basically, like from still photos to moving picture. And I think that is kind of to add to what you said, Stace, just kind of filling that arsenal of I love to feel inspired by a good film that's like so delicious. But I also love to feel inspired by like an Instagram story or a TikTok video or a photograph or something like a bowl of cereal. I don't know, something random though, you know, that's just like not necessarily film leaning.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Autumn, because that makes me think of Rose Glass too.
Yeah.
That's another one that has been rolling around in my mind, and we're still waiting to see Saint Maud. That's her first feature. But yeah, she's another inspiring director creator that I think is going to continue to make waves.
Yeah, it definitely is exciting over the last few years, where I remember we got this question in like 2017 and we were like, Greta Gerwig.
Who?
And it's nice now that there are so many, you know, women's names that are like working, and not that they weren't beforehand, but that they're like at the forefront of the media and the conversation now.
Well, it's becoming like popular.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer, it's becoming less fringe. It's becoming like, this is what people want to see. And so people who are in control of the money are like, oh, okay, I guess we have to throw money at this. So capitalism, whoops. But that is the thing that's happening, and we're seeing it have some effect, at least in this most recent round of Oscar award nominations.
Yeah, and the like high indie landscape, the like neon A24 focus feature kind of level, I feel like those distributors are doing a lot better jobs, you know, in how they're curating their lineup each year, and being more inclusive in a variety of ways. Maybe still not as much as they could. By maybe I mean definitely. But those are good distributors, I feel like, that at least are pushing out more of a diverse selection of filmmakers every year, at least in their last few years of dockets.
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely relate to like when I first started getting into movies, and Greta Gerwig was the only woman director I could think of. But yeah, just in the last couple of years, it is really amazing, the beginning of a transformation that hopefully is going to keep going. Well, I think that was a fabulous note to end on. So thank you both so much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. We're honored.